Here's what we know. This is the entire universe in one slide. Quantum fluctuations, birth, an entire explosion, rapid expansion, we call it inflation. There is the baby picture of the universe. That's sort of the imprint of what happened in the very earliest moments.
Guys, look at what's on screen here. If you can see on screen, right, guy, this is Neil deGrasse Tyson explaining the Big Bang. Look at this is all the models, guys. All the models of Big Bang, they show it just like this. And we're going to, they go into greater depth to show inside this little bell-shaped structure of the Big Bang and how they just, like, guys, they show you the Big Bang and tell you it looks like a bell. There's a reason for that. And if you see this point of lights, which is showing quantum fluctuations, which is just a hilarious invented concept. But if I go further in the video, it'll show you further. This is another depiction of the Big Bang. It's another bell-shaped item. There's a reason for that, guys. And there's a reason that they got a fake black hole at the beginning of the Big Bang. It makes it look like an eye. They go on in this video to talk in greater depth about the multiverse.
Theories in physics. Nevertheless, it is a subject of much ongoing research and speculation.
The Big Bang, by the way, could fit into a larger story. For example, the multiverse. Big Bang is probably not the whole story. It's probably a piece of a bigger story. So maybe there are multiple Big Bangs. This would give us the multiverse. We don't have data for this, but we have good theoretical, philosophical reasons to think that a multiverse exists.
I hope everyone heard that. They don't have data for this. All conjecture, all assumption. This is theories, guys. Pure theories. They're getting government grants and funding to propagate theories. He just admits they don't have data for this multiverse idea, but the Big Bang could be a small part in a greater story. It's all nonsense, guys. They don't have data for this, not at all.
Each of these bubbles is a universe coming in and out of existence, and we're just one of them.
Okay, you remember what I said earlier about the Milky Way and the terminology and how the grandness, they talk about the cosmic universe. And now he's showing you the visualizations of this supposed theory of the multiverse, that our existence and reality and galactic universe is just in one little bubble amongst many. There's a reason for this deception they're setting up, because they're, and I'll explain at the end about the interdimensionality of unclean spirits versus actually being from a distant galaxy or something like that. So there's a reason why they're trying to set this up.
And who knows how many universes there would be. These are fluctuations, quantum fluctuations in the universe.
And real quick, guys, you know how they talk, the whole story about the Big Bang is that it explodes, there's rapid expansion, and then there's contraction. This is what they claim. If you go deep into the theory of Big Bang, it's not just that particles and matter and everything, space and time, came out of nothing, but that it all is going to contract again in the future, come back to a point of density, and then explode again. So there is chaos, order coming back, chaos, order coming back. There's destruction, there's life, there's destruction, there's life, this cycle that goes over and over. They're straight plagiarizing this philosophy, this conjecture of Big Bang and multiverse from ancient India, and I'm going to go over that here in just a minute.
That spawn entire other universes. So it's an intriguing direction. It may be that the dark matter is not matter at all. It's the gravity from ordinary matter from a nearby universe in the multiverse, whose gravitational influence we feel.
Now I'm pausing because I want you to think about what he just said. He's saying maybe this gravity that we feel is not really from our universe, but from a interdimensional multiverse next to us, and we feel that effect even though it's unseen. Guys, this is fancy language for explaining stuff that they're going to set up in the future. What the Bible would express to you as being affected by unclean spirits. This whole multiverse, this is why the propaganda of the Marvel and DC movies are pushing the idea of multiverse and how you can have the same superheroes in different times, different realities, different dimensions, and how they can interact with each other, and how one will affect the other. One multiverse, whatever happens in this universe will affect what happens in this universe. That's already going on anyway, between the Father and his realm above and how the angels come down to affect our reality, and how the unclean spirits try to destroy our reality through deception and wickedness. So, and we can't see either one of them unless they decide to reveal themselves. So what I just explained is scriptural, but what all these fancy graphics you're seeing and this cosmic language that they're making everything sound like, that's the modern version of what we're going to look at here in just a few minutes after I introduce my guest. We're going to look at how that is straight plagiarized from ancient India. So right now I want to bring in one of my surprise guests to the stream. This is Austin. What's it get? Welcome, brother.
How's it going, man?
Good. Welcome, man. It's good to see you on here. We actually have another surprise guest that just joins us. This is Wes Blaze from Wes Blaze Music. What's up, guys?
What's
Wes Blaze.
Shalom, shalom. What's happening?
Hey,
Howdy,
what's
Austin.
going on, guys? Good to see you.
bro?
Austin, we've been watching your stream. You're out there. You're laboring, trying to express the truth to people. You're literally in D.C. right now. Are you still there today?
I am.
Okay. And you've been telling people about the shape of creation. You've been telling about the truth of the Father's behavior. You've been telling them, trying to tell them, right? I've seen some of the interviews you've done randomly with people that had enough courage to talk with you, because it can be kind of intimidating, stranger on the street with a microphone and a camera. But some people have actually been coming up and talking to you, right? So how do you think that's been? How's that been going in your estimation? What's your feel from all that so far?
Honestly, it's hit or miss. Like a lot of people are effectively zombies at this point, bro. But a few people are kind of like thirsty for knowledge. It's refreshing in the sense that when you're on here, you run across a lot of zealotry for the other side, I would say. But in the real world, people are a little different. So it's hit or miss, but people are pretty receptive when they hear me out. So I think that people are kind of, thirsty for knowledge. It's been refreshing to me, even in the heart of the beast.
Nice, man. I'm excited to see that what little reception you have received. And I haven't seen all of the stuff you've done, but I've seen enough to know that you are having an impact, right? People are there. Even some of the people that are just walking by and they start slowly walking by because they are listening. You are having an impact. And because the thing that you're talking about, no one's ever talked to them about in general. The average person, the stuff that we're talking about tonight, the things I'm presenting, the average person has never heard this stuff. So at first it seems crazy, but because it connects so quickly with some of the internal questions they've always had, and NASA's propaganda doesn't truly answer for them, I think that's why you are being heard way beyond what you might realize. So I just want to encourage you.
Thank you for the encouragement.
Yeah. And Wes Blaze, welcome tonight, brother. Thanks for being able to join me for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Austin, I've been watching a lot of your stuff, brother. I've really been impressed by, just your knowledge, your intelligence, and your vocabulary, and your ability to convey the message. And it's been impressive, brother. I've enjoyed following along with what you're doing.
Thank you, bro. Well, I need to shout both of you guys out too, because y'all are crushing, bro. My man's dropping the music, and y'all's content's super good. I sent one of your videos on your channel, Wes Blaze, to my dad actually, or not, who won't hear me out about it. This is one of those short interviews, so I think you guys are doing awesome. So you keep it up as well, for sure.
Hey, thank you. All praise to the Father.
Cool.
No doubt.
So I've never done this before in Kingdom Cast, but I thought I'd try it tonight because you two gentlemen are specifically suited for the type of information I'm presenting tonight. So even though I didn't get quite as far as I'd like into my presentation, I still wanted to bring you on so that the audience could get as much time with you both as possible. But would you guys mind allowing me to walk through some of the rest of my presentation until we finish, and then y'all can comment as you see fit on what I present?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm here to hang out.
All right, guys. So all I've been trying to show is prepping the idea of where they're getting Big Bang, where they're getting heliocentrism, where they're getting multiverse theory, and literally some of the actual visuals that they want to show from all this is what we're going to look at here in this little short video here in just a minute. They actually present the Big Bang in a unique shape of a bell. And this never clicked with me back in the day. And I promise it didn't even click with me probably for the last 2 years until about 2 years ago. And I started researching the Nazi Bell Project. And I started like, oh, this is interesting. Why would they do, well, that's weird. What's with the bell? That doesn't seem like an aerodynamic design, right? So why would they try to use that? This is the actual visuals that they say happens that apparently the Big Bang only banged in one direction. So this is crazy to me. And this little, right after the point of bright white on the right-hand side, you see this little bluish green, looks like a little sea of static. They show visuals of that later, and they try to say, well, this is, all of the cosmic realms, all of the galaxies in one area and how they're all expanding out. But apparently it only expands in one direction. So this is pretty interesting as far as that doesn't seem to make, if anything ever exploded, not even within our atmosphere with gravity and electromagnetism, all the stuff that they will admit but can't prove, even if it exploded within what they say, we never see an explosion happen like this. Like apparently the Big Bang was a shape charge that the police use on doors to entry. It's like, this is craziness. So with that said,
The Dark Ages.
sorry, let me go there. This actually comes from ancient Hindu theology, and this is something I've never presented to my audience before. But I found this quite some time ago, and it just blew me away. And I was like, I got to include this in my Investigating Babylon series, guys. Let's read just a little bit get a brief introduction. I'm not going to bore you too much with it, but here in the earliest mentions of cosmic cycles, remember what we already talked about, what they say about the Big Bang, exploding, contracting again, exploding, contracting again. That's the same description of what used to be explained through cosmic cycles in Sanskrit literature. And this is a huge deal to NASA. And I'm going to explain here in just a minute why Sanskrit specifically is a huge deal to NASA. So it's found way back in the day, 1st, 3rd century BCE, all the way back to the 4th. And in the Mahabharata, there are inconsistent names applied to the cycle of creation and destruction. A name theorized is still being formulated, where Yuga, which is generally an age of time, and Kalpa, which is the day of Brahma, are used, or a day of the Brahman or of Brahma, the creator god, or simply referred to as the process of creation and destruction, with Kalpa at the day of the Brahma becoming more prominent in later writings. He goes on to say that Vishnu is a part of this trinity of Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma. Vishnu is known as the preserver within the Trinity, the Hindu trinity that includes Brahma and Shiva. In Vaishnavism tradition, Vishnu is the supreme god, being who creates and protects and transforms the universe. A goddess is stated to be the energy and creative power. Well, we know that evolution, at least as it's taught, right? We understand adaptation, but evolution as it's generally taught is a process of transformation. And this is something that we cannot observe, but it's still taught anyway, right? And there's different forms they talk about it. I've already mentioned celestial evolution, and then you've got biological evolution, all that kinds of stuff. Only thing that we do see is adaptation within each species, but we've never seen cross-species transformation. But yet, this is what is taught in modern day, and it's repackaged from teachings from the ancient god Vishnu. It's a goddess stated to be the energy and creative power of which, with this counterpart Lakshmi, the equal complementary part of Vishnu. He's the highest form of Ishvar, is the qualities of Saguna. Please ignore some of these references if you don't understand. It's okay. That's not the point. They have certain form, but they're limitless, transcendent, and unchanging absolute Brahman. And that means this idea of having Dharma and within Brahma is that you have the truth. You have the absolute knowledge, the correct theology, the correct doctrine, the correct truth. And the primal Atman, which is the soul and the self of the universe. So what's this saying is that Vishnu was the all-encompassing soul of the universe, and how it transforms and creates and has energy. So you guys hear in New Age wording and theology how they're always talking about, oh, well, just ask the universe and let the universe decide for you. Well, there's a reason where they get that language, even though the average American that's using it and smoking blunts to the point where they can't think straight, even though that's, that's where they get this New Age language. And when they get out of yoga class and they're talking about, oh yeah, just ask the universe and they'll tell you which job to choose. That kind of language comes from somewhere. And this is where it originally came from 4,000 years ago. There's many benevolent and fearsome depictions of Vishnu and benevolent aspects. He's depicted as an omniscient sleeping on the coils of the serpent Adashisha, who represents time. So what do they tell you that the universe consists of that you can't see, test, or demonstrate is space-time? That it's the fabric of the universe. And it's floating in the primeval ocean of milk. This is the Milky Way, guys. This is literally the same theology. It's just brought to us in a new form to trick us. Whenever the world is threatened with evil, chaos, and destructive forces, Vishnu descends in the form of an avatar incarnation to restore the cosmic order and protect Dharma, which is their teaching, their theology and doctrine. It goes on to say, this is the last slide on this. And by the way, if you haven't noticed yet, on the right-hand side, this is an ancient depiction of Vishnu in a multiverse, as she creates all the dimensional realms that she exists in. This is where the multiverse idea even comes from. It goes on to say the Bhagavad Purana, which is slightly different from the Bhagavad Gita. It summarizes the Vishnu theology, wherein it frequently discusses the merging of the individual soul with the absolute Brahman, the absolute truth and reality, according to how they saw it. The return of Brahman into his own true nature. So basically, like they would say in Neil deGrasse Tyson language, right? That you're basically a meat bag, and that when you die, your particles go back into the universe. This is exactly what was taught 4,000 years ago. It says this concept of moksha is explained as ekattva. This is unique because that's the word for oneness. and also absorption as an intimate union, wherein one is completely lost in Brahman, which is you're taking back to your true nature yourself into what they call their truth. So this is where it's interesting, because guys, think about what we see in a lot of communities that preach a modern day Catholic version of the Trinity. And now Wes and I even see in Torah-based communities, there's an offshoot of oneness Trinitarian theology, where they teach that, well, the Father's not actually distinct from the Son, and there's no Holy Spirit like traditional Trinitarians teach, but they also teach the Father is actually the Son. They're just one together. They ignore the definition of the word oneness in John chapter 10, where Jesus even explains it in the following verses, talking about how they're one in unity and purpose and theology. They ignore all that context in those definitions, and they say, no, they're actually the same entity. They're together. Even though they apparently exist in two separate places at two separate times, they have oneness with each other. And then once we become, once they save us, when we get in the resurrection, we'll be one with them and inside of them somehow. And they can't explain it because they don't realize they're actually just repeating this mantra, this doctrine that's been repackaged and brought to them through Catholic and Protestant means, unfortunately not taking the scriptures in context. So this is why the ancient Hindus taught a Trinity, and they taught a version called oneness, where you would be absorbed back into the essence of the truth and the supreme power of the universe. It's wild. Any thoughts, guys?
Yep. I mean, that about sums it up as far as what we're seeing with the same kind of ideas, the same arguments presented to us when we talk about these concepts. We try to do it from scripture, but all too often it's these strange, emotional, romanticized, stories that they just cling to, that you don't know where they came from until you look at information like this.
Yeah, that's a trip, bro. I've never read that. That's blowing my mind right now. This is some gravy. I can't believe that. See, now it kind of makes sense why they've pressed this doctrine so hard in modern Christianity, because it has this pagan undertone.
Yeah, and it reinforces all the heliocentric teachings on the non-theological side, because it's literally used to be combined from this theology from ancient Babylon and ancient India. And Austin, I'm not sure if you've seen previous installments of this series, but I've spent quite a few installments expressing how ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, ancient Babylon, ancient Acadia, and ancient India all had the same theologies. They just had their own little specific words for these theologies. For Shiva be representative like Apollyon, so they're all very much similar in how they describe things. Brahma would be more like Ra to the ancient Egyptians. And so they all had the same destructive philosophies and pagan occult teachings and practices, where child human sacrifice, worshiping the stars in the sky, worshiping the demigods and Nephilim, that kind of stuff. And they all even had the same machines of war and transport, which with their flying machines. So I've kind of done a lot of series breakdown, all that stuff. And now I'm even trying to show this is where the word Catholic means universalism. To the average viewer who's not aware of that, this is where Catholicism even would bring in these ideas and push them into the early days of believers following Yeshua as Christians. And I know there's a lot of debate about that word. I'm really not trying to focus on that for now, but the point is, anyone that was trying to follow the way of Yeshua and actually do the commandments as were being taught in the 1st and 2nd century, they were immediately being infiltrated with Gnosticism from the Greeks and the philosophy therein. And then once that formalized, and I would like to say carterized, as a Catholic teaching, they then brought in this idea of the Trinity. And you see that in some of the writings of the quote unquote early church fathers around the 250 BC, 250 AD and further, where suddenly their writings started to change. They started mentioning this Trinity idea all the time. And then before you know it, those guys became inducted as bishops and archbishops and people like in the Catholic structure and hierarchy of authority, because they're teaching this ecumenical universalism from way back, and they started immediately pushing that into the faith of the believers because they were controlling as much as they could. I mean, they were killing Christians left and right, and they were trying to strip them of their actual texts where they were learning about the prophets and the writings of the New Testament and Paul's letters. They were trying to take them and steal them from people, feed them to lions, crucify them on the stake, burn them at random. They were killing them everywhere, and that only increased. And in the meantime, that's when Babylon comes in with the Catholic Church. And so anyway, that's kind of a different episode. I'm just trying to show this is the same theology that's been repackaged. So I'm going to go on and keep going just a little bit further so we have more time to chat at the end of this. This is what we're all shown since birth, right? That we're here in this part of our solar system in the Milky Way. which hopefully you understood what I just shown you about this Vishnu character from ancient India. All the terminology that describes where we are, that used to be part of the theological terminology of ancient Vishnu. You are not here, by the way. Okay, this is a fabrication. You're not here. This was that cosmic radiation that explodes in that bell-shaped image I showed you earlier that they describe the Big Bang with. And they try to say that this is all, this would be looking inside the bottom of the bell. We were looking from a side profile image earlier from their little cartoon depictions, and now this would be looking inside the bell. And you would see this as it explodes towards you, basically, if I could give some direction. But I think to me, all of it is symbolic, right? All of it is them repackaging theology in a visual manner so that you subconsciously are in alignment with the literal depictions that creates the visual representations. That's why this is truly just a visual representation of the eye that they always show. But what doesn't make sense is that not only, let me go back here real quick, not only is this, just for the average viewer out there, in case you're new to this, in case it's the first time you've seen this, and you have seen this image all your life, and you've ever asked yourself, where is that bright spot in the middle? Why can't I see that? Because at some point, I'm going to see that, right? At some point in our rotation, I'm going to be facing away from the sun, and I should be seeing this, right? At some point in their little model. And if it is that bright, I'm obviously being tongue-in-cheek here, but if it is that bright, guys, this is ridiculous. Like this would overpower the sun. You would never see the sun. You would see a little ring and shadowy of the sun from this thing overshadowing it from the background. You would never, if it was truly that bright. And that's, of course, ignoring the actual law of the inversion square law of light and how it travels and all that kind of stuff. Austin is very familiar with stuff like that. This here is this whole concept that they're trying to show you with this Big Bang model. It ignores basic stuff that we can test and prove, which is this idea of how if anything was on the outskirts of a circle, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt for 2 seconds and say that image we saw the Milky Way and we're on one of the outer areas of it. Let's just say that was true. Okay, that means everything on the interior of it would be circling around that Milky Way slower than what we are circling, because we'd be on the outer edge. That means in order to make the revolution, we have to go faster. But that's not how explosions work, because that means if we're on the outer edge, that means we exploded faster to that greater distance than those on the interior edge, which means we're traveling faster, both in a quote unquote elliptical circle in our spinning around the galaxy, as well as everything that we would see outside of us, out on the exterior of us in that big circle. That means that would be spinning. That means we should see stars that are spinning extremely faster than other stars, or therefore all this physics makes no sense. I mean, this is just some simple basic ways to apply what we can test and prove, just like with the merry-go-round, right? Things on the exterior of the merry-go-round are going faster than someone sitting at the very center of the merry-go-round. They're not spinning as fast. So all this is just this concept of inertia, centrifugal force, and how it works in the path of something spinning in a circle. Now, I'm not trying to go into a lot of math and bore a lot of people, because this is an overall presentation, but just to show you guys that even their basic model that they show you with these cartoon images, none of it can be validated with actual math. Wes Blaze, Austin, do you guys have any thoughts on this?
They're just pseudoscience for you, man. I don't know. I think it's hilarious. I guess they do admit that those are like color enhancements, that they there's computer generated images that they use math to outline and they make it a cartoon, and then they admit that. So I don't even know why people would take it seriously at all from that perspective at all. But yeah, that is a very interesting point that you make, right? Because we'd be on the outside, we'd be going extremely fast relative to the center of that thing. And then our sky would look like an etch-a-sketch, certainly portions of it, because there would be part of our sky we're observing even further out from that central point. They would be going crazy fast. So I don't know how they even would try to answer that. I'm sure they'll just use the magic word relative and it all goes away.
Yeah, that's where the relativity comes in.
Even closer to imaginary home, they say that the Earth's orbit around the sun is elliptical, and that it would be speeding up in that short burst where it's going around the sun and then doing a long ellipsis. Like it has a long, oval trajectory, and it's slower on that end. And then when it gets to the narrow ellipsis, it starts to go faster, they say.
Right.
And so it's like, how?
What propels it? What's actually propelling it to go faster at those times and slow down at other times? They would say, well, it's just the way an ellipse works. I'm like, yeah, but an ellipse.
Gravity, they say.
Right. They would say it's gravitational force. It slingshots you around the sun, right? That's what it's doing. Like bad sci-fi movies. So this, of course, without doing an actual breakdown of a show about physics and math, I am trying to mix in a little bit of ideas as I express the overall theology of what they teach. It's because that's important, because we don't, like people have said in the comments, we do not see the stars change, they never change. And we definitely don't see star trails showing what we just tried to explain, that there should be a extremely fast movement of the outer star trails. But instead, the star trails that we see move at the same speed. It's crazy.
And they don't depict any progressive movement through space.
No, they don't.
Whatsoever.
It's the same. So, and of course, they never change the actual position in the firmament either, because they're not going to.
Look how beautiful that is, though.
Yeah.
Just an amazing place we live in. It's crazy that they undermined just like the beauty right in front of us with all this nonsense.
Can you guys stomach a few more minutes of this guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's my favorite guy ever, bro.
I think you must realize that some people are going to go to your show at the planetarium and they're going to say, aha, those scientists have discovered God, because God, dark matter, is what holds this universe together.
So is that a question?
It's a statement. You know they're going to say that.
So the history...
Dude, the arrogance is off the chart here. Even though he just called him out and called them out for what they subtly teach, which is the idea that dark matter is a version of their God, because it does hold everything together. They can't account for 95% of what they call open vacuum of space, and they just think, oh, it's all connected through dark matter. It's crazy. It's crazy, guys. This guy is he's going to try to tap dance his way through this. It's only just a couple minutes
of discovery, particularly cosmic discovery, but discovery in general, scientific discovery, is one where at any given moment there's a frontier. And there tends to be an urge for people, especially religious people, to assert that across that boundary into the unknown lies the handiwork of God. This shows up a lot. Newton even said it. He had his laws of gravity and motion, and he was explaining the moon and the planet. He was there. He doesn't mention God for any of that. And then he gets to the limits of what his equations can calculate. So can't quite figure this out. Maybe God steps in and makes it right every now and then. That's where he invoked God. And Ptolemy, he bet on the wrong horse, but he was a brilliant guy. He formulated the geocentric universe with Earth in the middle. This is where we got epicycles and all the machinations of the heavens. There was still a mystery to him. He looked up and uttered the following words: when I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies. These are the planets going through retrograde and back. The mysteries of the earth. When I trace at my pleasure the windings to and fro of the heavenly bodies, I no longer touch earth with my feet. I stand in the presence of Zeus himself and take my fill of ambrosia. What he did was he didn't invoke Zeus to account for the rock that he's standing on or the air he's breathing. It was this point of mystery, and in gets invoked God. This, over time, has been described by philosophers as the God of the gaps. If that's where you're going to put your God in this world, then God is an ever-receding pocket of scientific ignorance. If that's how you're going to invoke God.
So guys, the reason I'm showing you this is because he is this whole thing, and that's why I showed you the clips before this as we introed into this presentation about the Big Bang, about cosmic evolution, about how this gravity stars, different galaxies are formed according to their model, according to their fictional, unprovable, unobservable model. All of that is a foundational premise to everything he's saying right now. For Newton, for Kepler, for all these guys that come up with these theories based upon that model to try to make sense of that model, both observationally and mathematically. He then steps in with what, a lot of people don't realize he's actually employing mockery right now, but he then steps in with a form of mockery to say the reason why you have to invoke God in these gaps of our model that you can't figure out is because, well, You can't figure out, this model doesn't make sense. So therefore, we're now going to make fun of you for your religious belief, thinking that you now, they already got you on the foundation to think that you believe this model is legit. And now when the model doesn't make sense and you say, well, God must explain the details, God must make it work where I can understand it. Now they're going to mock you for that and say, that's God of the gaps. That's just your superstition because of what you don't understand. But that superstition and your belief in God, coincidentally, your belief in God that you now are ascribing to that lack of information, that is going to dwindle as we provide more answers for that quote unquote lack of information in a model that they designed, that they continue fabricating answers when gaps in their theory start to arise. This is why, and Wes Blaze and Austin can attest to this and expound on this some more. This is why we continually see NASA make up new things. They continually make up new types of discoveries. Suddenly there's a satellite you never heard of that apparently has been out there for 30 years, and now it's seen something new that they then theorized through trigonometric parallax, how it must have this much helium in it because it flickers a little bit of blue every now and then. And therefore, we've now figured the answer out to what we couldn't figure so far, or we didn't understand 5 or 10 years ago. And therefore now you don't need to question this. We already figured it out. It's all a, what's the word? It's all a snake charm. Okay. You got a basket with snake in it, and you got a dude that's good at playing the little flute. The goal is do you believe that this guy can get the snake out of the basket, and that's going to entertain you? And when he can't, you got to figure out, well, maybe he's not playing the right tune. So then he makes up a new tune to get the snake to come out. And finally he comes out and you think, oh, the whole process is validated.
Yeah. I remember there for a while, it was just every so often they were announcing a new planetary system that they discovered with Earth-like planets. And there was new cartoons for that every so often. And then here also for a few years now, I've noticed every few months, there's another near-miss asteroid being announced. Have y'all noticed this? I don't know if they just repeat the same stories, but
they've said that so many times, bro.
Yeah. Apparently in their astronomical model of asteroids, supposedly, and micrometeorites that are flying at hundreds of thousands of miles through this fictional model that they have the Earth in, and we keep missing them. I mean, we're winning the lottery like every day, all the time. We're winning the lottery all the time. But apparently the moon, according to their theory, has not won the lottery. He's been pelted. But somehow the moon was pelted on the side that faces us.
Yeah.
But yet
all
we win the lottery all the time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love that too.
It's like, did the Earth and the moon have a war together? Did the Earth shoot at the moon? That's how it would have had to happen if those were actual craters.
That was actually during the custody battle, whenever they decided that the sun wasn't going to pull the moon, it was just going to pull the Earth and leave the moon alone. And so, the Earth won custody of the moon, and they had to fight it out.
Mm-hmm.
I asked that question when I was in like 10th grade, and my teacher couldn't answer it. Like, if the gravity is pulling the Earth around the sun, then why doesn't it affect the moon if it's way smaller? And of course, the answer is that relative mass because it's closer. Well, then it has to be going one way or the other. It has to be going towards the Earth or away from the Earth. And they've updated their model now. They say it goes 1.5 inches away from the Earth every year.
And no one catches it. And this is actually what you're talking about, Austin, is the answer to James Henry's question. So James Henry's asking, how are all these theories scientifically admissible? For the exact reason that Austin just explained. Whenever you do, and I actually saw this in college classes, people would actually ask a question, and the way that the collegiate system is set up and the systems of honors that they give and the placement within the teaching positions and their salaries are absolutely connected to this. The way the collegiate system is set up, there's so much pride built into being a professor. If your student challenges you on something you can't answer, they're not going to say, we don't know. They're going to bulldoze you with intimidation tactics so that you stop asking questions. Because ultimately, they can only teach what they get approved to teach through their collegiate consensus through their board, because they're evaluated by the overall board of the college that they're a part of. This is why when I was in college, I was so frustrated by having these textbooks I paid a ridiculous amount of money for, and then going to actual class and taking 3 pages of notes from the professor on stuff that was not even in the textbook. And then he was like, oh, you'll be testing on all of it. So you'll be testing on everything I'm talking about, plus everything in the textbook, even though we're not going to talk about anything that's in the textbook. Go home and read that on your own. And I was like, bro, why can't you just write down your thoughts, print it off, and then I can buy that? Like, why did I buy this book if all I'm being tested on is your ramblings? right? And it's not coherent. It's literally preaching. And this is what a lot of people don't realize about collegiate professors. So this is why they can take a scientific, inadmissible concept that's just a theory. And this is the way academia and the peer review process happens, is if it goes through different levels of approval, then it makes it to a final peer review, or then suddenly, you know, they have to literally agree with what you're saying to some degree. You have to have some sort of plausibility within their framework and their understanding to get something quote unquote published or peer reviewed. All of it is an intimidation process that is funneled in a pressure cooker to make sure that the right doctrine is being taught. And that's why there are preachers of these ideas, and everyone else is weeded out, because then you're going against what they believe is actual true knowledge, which takes us back to some of that language from ancient India, which is what they would call Brahma. If you go against the Brahma, if you go against what they taught, then suddenly you're outside of their theological and philosophical beliefs, and they can't accept you into their religion, into their mindset. And that's everything that we've been reading about. Just like someone else asked about Zeus, and I just want to address this real quick, because they heard Neil deGrasse Tyson made a quick reference to Zeus about someone quoting, it's
Ptolemy.
Yeah, Ptolemy quoting Zeus and the ambrosia concept. They did that often, and in that particular example, they're not invoking Zeus as a creator, even though many of the demigods and gods were spoken of as creators. They were just, this is just how he glorifies those demigods within his rhetoric that he does. Neil deGrasse Tyson does this all the time. This is, this is also why he wears a jacket that has a bunch of suns on it. And by the way, we're going to go into the actual suns he wears in his jacket. We're going to go into those suns and where they come from right now, but I'm just trying to get through some of this here with this bell idea. Okay. This is what he just explained to us, this idea of the Big Bang, the bell. Look at the bottom of the Big Bang. That's actually going to matter here in just a minute. We already talked about the shape that makes no sense with anything, about what they claim this Big Bang produces and continues to produce from its supposedly 13.8 billion year ago inception. This is the Big Bang theory, guys. All of it they show you is a bell. All of it. Anyone ever notice this? Weird, huh? It's truly weird. So apparently we live in a cone-shaped existence. I think Austin said it correctly. It's clown world. We literally got the dunce. We're living in a dunce cap.
Yeah. It's definitely clown world, bro. This is the way that I see it, though. It's so bad right now. Like, it's so far off, like, by 95%. 95% is dark energy and dark matter and all this nonsense. I'm just trying to figure out where they go from here, man, because when you point out that they had all this technology, and they were all pretty much similar across the world, they had the same type of beliefs, just with a little bit of different variants. Do they kind of roll the same, like, creation story out, and they've prepped us subconsciously for it, but did they invoke actual deities to replace some of the question marks? So I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. Like, where do they go from here? You know what I'm saying? I think that clowns like Neil deGrasse Tyson might get thrown under the bus, but it's just very interesting. I don't know. I could be wrong. I suppose this could be it. This could be the new religious deception, I guess, and people don't realize it's a religion, but just weird to me.
I personally think that's why they're prepping us with the multiverse theory, is because they are going to I've heard you mention this theory, which I completely could see how they could do this. And the theory that they're going to actually assume the biblical cosmological model and actually come out and say, well, this is actually where we live. I know we told you this to protect you, but now that the aliens have arrived, we can't actually hide it anymore. But because they're interdimensional, we're in one form of existence inside this enclosed area. They're from another one, and they have this higher technology, and they're going to deceive you and all this stuff. So they could absolutely assume the FE model and bring it in, and because they can easily prove it, like so many people have been doing. But if they don't, they still have all this to work with, to where they just say, well, these are people, these are our progenitors. This is where we're going to talk about directed panspermia here in just a few minutes. And they're going to try to talk about how life was seeded from these higher intelligent beings. So there's multiple ways they can go with it. But real quick, I want to show you this bell concept. This is a very short video about a guy who actually found another facility very much related to the famous Nazi facility that had to do with the Bell Project. So I'll let you guys check this out.
In the remote Owl Valley, just outside the small village of Ludwikowice, Poland, stands a strange decagonal structure strongly associated with Nazi mysticism, known as Hitler's Henge, or Mucholapka. Mucholapka actually means the fly trap in Polish. Mucho means fly, lapka means trap. Interestingly, in Czech language, mucho or mucha in the feminine form is actually the name of a very famous artist whose paintings you've probably seen before. Nobody knows why the place is actually called the fly trap, but some people say it's because it looks like the traditionally hand-blown glass fly traps that you get in Poland. What they do know is that the structure was built by the Nazis and may have been the foundation for some kind of tower. The structure also stands on top of a vast complex of military tunnels built into the hillside. These tunnels were actually built by Polish concentration camp prisoners. Mainstream scholars believe that this structure was actually the support for a cooling tower or a water tower. According to others, though, the Nazi high command would not have devoted so many military resources here if the valley contained only an energy plant. The tunnels beneath the flytrap were part of a massive military complex known as Project Reise. Reise means giant in German, and that's because there was a massive underground military complex beneath. It is said the complex tested new weapons. The most advanced was known as Die Glocke, which means the bell in German. There's a great deal of evidence to show that leading German physicists working with the Nazis, including Hermann Oberth and Werner von Braun, who later went on to make significant contributions to the space race for the United States, were involved in creating a bell-shaped machine that could use electromagnetism to hover in the air. Surviving sketches depict the bell as having dimensions measuring around 10 feet high and 5 feet in diameter, with a ceramic covering. The ceramic covering is an important feature, as Hermann Oberth later went on to develop a thin layer of ceramic covering for the US space shuttles, which is still used even today. You know, a bell-shaped object would actually go contrary to the modern laws of aerodynamics, and that's because as a bell shape, it creates a lot of drag. But that actually might be a good option if you want to move from side to side, the way that a hovercraft moves side to side on a bed of air. The bell would move side to side on a bed of electromagnetism so that it could kind of break away from gravity. So far, so good. But this is where the story gets weird. The bell was actually supposed to be powered by some strange material which may or may not exist, which was called Zerum 525, better known as red mercury.
Guys, you guys remember talking about red mercury back in episode or part 4 of this series?
Yeah.
Remember what we talked about, how red mercury was something that's spoken of and theorized to actually power the Vimanas of ancient India.
They made engines with it, combustible.
Yes. Yes. So this is something that I don't think this is any coincidence at all. You guys remember the supposed stories of Hitler sending exploration teams to Tibet to learn the ancient ways of ancient India? Did you guys know that there's an actual, in the modern day, in India and also in the Tibet regions, there are an actual sects of people that still are Nazis, that are actually Indians, that have adopted, they worship Hitler, and they view him as a great leader, and they actually have little mustaches they've shaved to look like him. They have little parades where they all dress up like Nazis in India and Tibet, even in the modern time. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff like that.
It's crazy, guys. So what this guy is trying to describe...
The Vedic, and they called Vedic?
Yeah, some sects of the Vedic sects, and they also they get their information from the Vedic scripts, from ancient writings of India. But this is what supposedly Hitler sent both himself with other people down there to try, the SS and other people, to try to learn from them, because they were so interested in the Aryans, which was attributed to the ancient 7 feet tall gods of ancient India. So this is where you get a lot of that theory going in. So this guy's the guy I just showed you, he's just trying to show this Bell Project idea. And as you saw, powered by something that they theorized was red mercury, also moves side to side. It's not meant for airplane or rocket flight, but instead it's meant for left and right flight, like we would see very efficient flight from quote unquote UAPs or UFOs, right? That
Yeah, just like a bumblebee, bro. Bumblebees aren't aerodynamic, but they have a resonance frequency and they can fly through like 50 miles per hour wind, bro. It's the same thing. All you have to do is imitate a bumblebee. You know, the fact they say that we shoot rockets into space still is so funny to me.
that's
Like,
true. That's true. Yeah, in fact, it reminds me of you're talking about bumblebees and how they actually manipulate their flight path, even in high winds. It reminds me of and this is a random reference, but Tiger Woods was actually given he was sitting with other golfers. I used to golf a lot when I was younger, and I remember watching this special event where they were interviewing golfers, and specifically like the big boys like Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods and John Daly, and they were talking about how they were wonderful with driving the ball really far down the range, and they could place the ball specifically in the grass clippings 390 yards down. So if you've ever played golf, that's really difficult to do. Specifically, if you can literally choose, all right, I see that those little stripes where the lawnmower guy cut the grass. I'm going to pick the third stripe on the left, and I'm going to land the ball there. So this is how good they were. And Tiger was telling some of the other guys were like, yeah, sometimes wind is a huge barrier to what we do. We have to adjust. Maybe you grab a different club, hit it at a lower angle of a trajectory. And Tiger goes, the wind doesn't matter if you know how to hit the ball. Just making all these dudes look silly, right? And he's correct. Like, I mean, if you can spin the ball the proper way, the wind doesn't matter. You'll cut through the wind. So just like the example of the bees, this is what is the premise of some of these crafts that these ancient rulers of these ancient societies exhibited with their flying machines. As we already talked about before, we got the Rakma Vimana, widely talked about in the Bhagavad Gita and other ancient Sanskrit writings from ancient India. Guys, this is the exact same design as what we get from NASA. Remember what that guy from the Bell Project just told us about, specifically the outer ceramic shell that is still being used in these vessels that NASA is making. Now, I don't think that these vessels that that we see on the right-hand side, I don't think they're mimicking the Vimana in flight. I think that they're just a showpiece, an exhibition piece that's used for the indoctrination and the propaganda. But literally, they're paying homage to it. Why? Why are they doing that? Because they worship the same God. And here is something very interesting from a researcher or one of the NASA employees from the 1980s. He wrote a paper. His name is Rick Briggs. Have you guys ever heard of this guy?
Kind of rings a bell, but couldn't tell you anything about him.
It's a great pun. So in Sanskrit, this is what this guy says. This is from, I think, 1987. He says that Sanskrit is an ancient language from India. It's an ancient Hindu language, and Sanskrit played an important he says it played an important role in many intellectual communities. Structure of the Sanskrit makes it suitable for artificial intelligence. This story began in 1985 when NASA scientists published a research paper titled Vedic Science, Knowledge Representation in Sanskrit and Artificial Intelligence. Rick Briggs was the scientist who published this research paper. In the paper, Rick mentioned how Sanskrit is the best natural language for the development of artificial intelligence-based software. He represented his ideas and derived the outcome in an artificial intelligence development and how natural language can be converted into a logical programming language. The paper was detailed, and NASA had invested a lot of money to find the best natural language for artificial intelligence. So guys, why is NASA trying to figure out artificial intelligence? What has anyone ever heard that that's part of what the money that they're getting, that's part of their research is AI projects?
Dude, this is the first thing I've ever heard of this.
And they're talking about this back in 1985.
Really? I remember looking into Jordy Rose and the D-Wave technology. Y'all remember seeing that?
Barely, yeah.
Yeah, so he himself said that it's another entity that speaks through the artificial intelligence in the quantum computing devices that they were creating. And he, I can't remember exactly the quote, but to paraphrase, he did say something along the lines of demonic.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I agree. And this is we'll expound upon that later as we jump into Revelation 9 and future episodes. So ultimately though, guys, this right here, this is a NASA research guy literally trying to tell NASA, look, you want to get AI done? You got to use Sanskrit. To me, this is crazy. This is crazy. He goes on to say, NASA invested about 2 decades with many resources for this matter. I never heard of it until like 6 months ago when I was researching some of this stuff. So he goes, if Sanskrit can be used as computing language, then efficiency will be increased. Sanskrit's a simple language. Panini, the Sanskrit scholar, worked his entire life on Sanskrit, and Rick saw his work, which led him to realize that the structure of Sanskrit is best for artificial intelligence development. Sanskrit grammar is context-free grammar. Now, guys, as you can imagine, this kind of got my attention because I have a channel called Kingdom of Context. I'm always trying to get people to look at the context, and because sometimes it'll affect on how the word is used and how, if the word has a homophonic meaning, right? So they're just basically saying, look, you don't have to worry about any of this stuff with Sanskrit, and that's why it's perfect for making AI and code with AI. It goes on to say the regular structure of Sanskrit can be easily translated into assembly language or easily run transformations like refactoring or AST level optimization. This connection is backed by many claims and an enormous amount of research. Although there's no official announcement by NASA, NASA is still working on NASA Explores Artificial Intelligence for Space Communications. It's one of their less publicized projects that they're actively working on. So, and they have it, and let's put at the bottom, they have an entire department dedicated to Sanskrit. Okay. So, by the way, Sanskrit, for all the people out there that may be trying to catch up to what we're talking about, Sanskrit is the actual language of the Bhagavad Gita, which is like ancient India's version of the Bible. And that's what we were just reading about Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva earlier. All that kind of stuff relates back to the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Purana, all their religious teachings and their thoughts. NASA is not just plagiarizing their cosmology and how their gods describe their multiverse cosmology, but now they're going to actually plagiarize the language that theology was written in to create artificial intelligence here in the West.
Context-free language.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
Boy, that's we deal with that. We deal with the bad side of that all the time, where people ignore the context and they want to use language without thinking about the context. So that could definitely—it's a hilarious statement in my experience. But
this is a trip, bro. I was at the Georgia Guidestones, and it says unite the world in a single living language, like a new single living language. Sanskrit's one of the top ones on the capstone, like a top capstone. So this is pretty wild. This is some gravy right here, bro. They might try to roll this out. I don't know. Maybe that's integrate it into some type of communication.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. This particular episode took me a lot to put together because I had to limit. There's so much to talk about. I didn't have a big enough ladle. So now we've going on to the same dude. Okay, Rick Briggs, this researcher that wrote about Sanskrit and AI in NASA in 1985. He says that he's also at the National Aeronautics Space Administration, made waves of publishing his paper about it, Knowledge Representation in Sanskrit and Artificial Intelligence. In his paper, Rick stated that the grammar of ancient Indian language Sanskrit, its structure and its rule base, as it was, had significant lessons for this business of natural language understandings. Briggs suggested the study of the way the ancient Indian grammarians worked, and it might help AI researchers finally solve the natural language understanding. An excerpt from the paper reads, "There's at least one language, Sanskrit, which for the duration of almost 1,000 years was a living spoken language with a considerable literature of its own. Besides works of literary value, there was a long philosophical and grammatical tradition that has continued to exist with undiminished vigor until the present century. Among the accomplishments of grammarians can be reckoned a method for paraphrasing Sanskrit in a manner that's identical not only in essence, but in the form with current work in artificial intelligence. This article demonstrates that a natural language can serve as an artificial language also, and that much work in AI has been reinventing a wheel millennial old." It's worded weird at the bottom there, but he's basically saying, guys, this is what they're doing. And they're 2 decades, NASA's been working on this. They have an entire department dedicated to this. This Ames Research Center on the right-hand side, where you're seeing the pictures of the hangar and the big blimp, this is where Rick Briggs worked for, I think, 22 years. This is one of the ancient Vimanas from the Bhagavad Gita. It's just blimps, guys. They had blimps back in those days, as well as these bell types. We already looked at Vimanas that are shaped like bells. We looked at the modern day experimentation from the Nazis with a bell-shaped craft powered by red mercury is exactly what the Bhagavad Gita also talked about. Went over that in previous episodes. But this specifically, back when NASA was more associated with the U.S. Navy, this was an old NASA program from the 1950s where they had blimps going up. Nowadays, they have these weather balloon style things, but they don't really have the blimps in the same capacity they did back in this original days of creating these same types of. What I'm saying is, guys, they're literally stealing from the past to deceive us again in the future. There's nothing new under the sun. So here's. Go ahead, Austin.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, this is crazy, man. You're ladling gravy for real right now, because I definitely think this is what they're doing. Like, they lied about the ancient civilizations; they're just basically replicating them, and this is wild to think about, because they have been using NASA to actually, make steps in this sense of like a progression and travel, but not what they've been saying, right? And then maybe there is an actual like religion to it, bro. There's a religious undertone to it, dude. It's just hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, actually, I agree with everything you said, and also one of the viewers, Miss Marcia, she's saying that she claims to know that there's a glass plate in CERN that has Sanskrit on it.
Whoa!
Well, we already know they got Shiva outside in their courtyard. I mean, so they're paying homage to whatever's going on. Of course, Shiva, part of that unholy trinity, was the world destroyer.
Right.
So we already know that they're paying homage. It's the same religion, the same occult religion. So this is the actual. I know that a lot of people reference the idea of ancient Hebrew, talking about nasa and nasha in the Hebrew. It depends on how you put the actual s in the Hebrew language, as far as if you're going to use it for an s sound or an sh sound. So a lot of people will talk about nasa in ancient Hebrew, speaking about something that can lift up, like the nasa or nasha, to deceive. But in ancient Sanskrit, nasa means destruction. It also means nose. It also means destroyed. And all these references out to the side are the religious texts where these words are used. It also means annihilation. It also means vanquishing. It also means the nostrils, completely finished, exhausted, dissipated, spoiled, lost, deviation. Whose nose? Of the nostrils. Nostrils. So, guys.
That's crazy, bro. This is getting wild.
So, in Sanskrit in ancient India, they have a word called nasa. NASA in the modern times has adopted the theology and the machinery of ancient India, and they call themselves destruction. They call themselves NASA. This is there's nothing new under the sun. This is all being repackaged. This is all the tentacles of Mystery Babylon, as it's collectively used throughout multiple societies. But these tentacles are shared. The theology, the machinations of how they implore the deceptions are shared by multiple countries. And like I said at the beginning of the broadcast, NASA is kind of like the tip of the spear in what they're doing, because now a lot of other countries, the European Union, Japan, China, Israel, they've adopted their own space programs, they adopt their own deception. They're fleecing their own people of tax dollars. It just, and a lot of it started with NASA. So let's look at the evil priesthood. This is the origins of NASA. So we have here, as mentioned in that Bell project, who was a part of that research team was this guy named Werner von Braun. A lot of people already know that Werner von Braun was a part of Operation Paperclip, who came over with Nazi scientists after World War II, and he became one of the lead founders of NASA. He also worked on the V1 and V2 rockets in Germany before the war was over, and those rockets have become a huge underpinning of all the rocketry programs that NASA employs. So this was what he did in 1932 to 1941. As you can see here, part of Operation Paperclip, some of these huge scientists that were all SS Nazis brought over with the group of scientists that we got. Russia got the rest of them, and they're brought over. Werner von Braun himself became a part of the space program. So here's his actual official passport thing that they had back in the day for him. This is some of the propaganda pictures making him out to be the man of rockets and space. This is him being portrayed as an honorable figure that's helping us progress society. Displays back. This is they're glorifying this guy back in the 50s and 60s because they're building up his story about he's the guy. But guys, there's actual pictures of this dude literally chilling with Nazis. And with the guy who is at the bottom in the center, which I'm not going to say his name because we'll get this demonetized and it won't be in circulation. So you can see the guy with the mustache in the center with the Nazis, as Brad Pitt from Inglourious Basterds would say. And we got Werner von Braun's right there. He's in the crowd. We also got him just friendly, jovial, taking pictures with other Nazis. Here he is walking with Nazis, doing something, photo ops. Here is another photo op on the right-hand side with more of them just chilling. They're not killing him, guys, because he's working with them. He works for them. Here he is front and center. Here he is actually in a Nazi uniform on the right-hand side. So just in case the people are out there going, well, maybe he was just hired to work on their, as a scientist. He's just trying to be hired to work on the rocket program. He doesn't mean he was an actual SS. Yes, he was. He's in uniform right here. They've actually, this is part of his documented history. He was an SS officer. So that's essentially what they did, guys, is they took dudes that used to be in the SS, full on jackbooted, you know, throwing up the right hand to their Fuhrer. They brought them to the United States. They took the uniforms off and they assimilated them into our the scientific rocket program that turned into NASA. This was the origins of NASA.
Mhm.
It's crazy, guys. And that's why I call it the evil priesthood, because all they're doing is they're creating the mechanisms of trickery that pushes the theology. So just like back in the days in ancient Greece in the temples of Zeus, the priests of the temples of Zeus would build these massive machine works of wood that would actually move and create and do different things and trick people into thinking that there was some sort of large event happening that the gods were creating. So then the average person would come in and they would do these. I can't remember the actual name of the one that it worked on water and everything. And the priests would build these because that's what magicians are great at, is they're actually taught and trained in actual mechanical trickery. Like just watch any magician's revealed video on YouTube. They're masterfully deceptive, but it's all based on some sort of gadget that they've invented that you didn't know existed. That's how they don't, there's, I mean, and the more severe ones, yes, there's demonic power affecting them, but the showmen, they literally build machines, contraptions to actually pull off their deceptions. If you guys have never seen the movie The Prestige, but there's a magician's battle, and it shows you how they built these contraptions to fool the people for their stage shows. This is what the ancient priests of the temples of Zeus and I'm going blank right now, but all the other temples that they used to actually do to fool people, to make them think that the gods were actually doing something inside these temples. So we actually see in the book. Oh, sorry, Wes, you're muted.
My bad. Lying signs and wonders.
Yes, and that they're going to do this again, in my opinion, with not just Project Bluebeam, but the other one, the directed energy weapons.
Yeah.
This is my interpretation, my understanding of how they're going to actually, the second beast is actually going to bring fire down from heaven to light the sacrifice on an altar. But we also see this idea in what is it? The book that was taken out of our canon, Daniel and the Three Babylonians. I'm going blank. Bel and the Dragon. So in Bel and the Dragon, Daniel actually is with the king. I think it was it's either Darius or Nebuchadnezzar at the time, but he's basically he's telling the king, look, these priests to Baal, they're not actually worshiping anything. Like the Baal is a wood statue, man. He's not actually eating this food that you're putting before him every day. But the king's like, what are you talking about? The food's gone. It's eaten every day. And he's like, yeah, I'll watch this. So he puts powder on the floor. And then you can see, and then they shut the door and the king seals it. So then you see that the priests had built a contraption underneath the altar, underneath the statue of Baal, where he and his family would come out in the middle of the night and eat all the food and then come back and leave again. So then the next morning when the king comes in there, the food's eaten, but then Daniel shows him all the footprints on the ground. So, there's always been about trickery. Always. This is what the occult does. They want to trick you into belief. This is why Yahweh is constantly telling people in the Old Testament, guys, these are not real gods. They're just wood, stone, and silver and gold. Like, they're just things that men have crafted with their own hands. Yes, there's demonic activity and influence to get people to believe this stuff, but in the end, what you're worshiping that you've also attributed to the stars, they're not real. There's only one true creator of heaven and earth. So this is why all this stuff now, like I said at the beginning of the show, it's the same deception is being implored, but there's propaganda in a sterilized way that they're calling science, even though it's all built on assumption, can't be proven or validated. And that science is being pushed upon people without the nitty-grittiness of the actual rituals. Those are done privately now. Now all the theology, all the doctrine is being pushed publicly, because the doctrine, they can mold and mix with they can make it more ecumenical, right? And hide the dirty practices that is the underpinnings of the doctrine. Whereas when we look at the scriptures, the doctrine of our Father is truth, and the underpinnings, which is our covenant behavior, only leads to peace and love and righteousness, right? The fruits of the Spirit. So there's a stark difference between the theology relating to the doctrine in what the world teaches versus what the scriptures teach, with the Father's covenant behavior mingled into his biblical cosmology and how it all matters together. The language of the occult, we're almost done, guys. The language of the occult. Let's look at the vector symbolism real quick. This is, I apologize. Actually, I thought the clip was up here. One second. I had the clip. And this is... Oh, this is unfortunate. I lost the clip.
It's the vector symbolism. We're talking about the same part of the logo that's in the NASA logo, and many other space agencies all use it too. It's in the Star Trek logo.
Yeah. Yes, I actually had an actual clip from an old documentary. Some of the people have seen it, some haven't, and I thought I had it loaded up in the program, but I guess not. I was going to show people real quick. But what are you guys' thoughts of what we're talking about so far? While I look for this.
Deep stuff. There's a lot here to consider.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. I think that it's a mix. It's a mix of a lot of like fairy tales of these deities and these different things like that. And then I think there is some underlying truth to it too. I think that even within their own little groups, they kind of like throw out these nets of deception to see who wiggles through it to weed them out. So I don't know. It's really hard to get down to exactly what is real, but I think there's something real. I think there's something real to the metaphysical aspect of what they think is going on, but I don't know what it is. Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah, I do believe that they do have physical, like, literally unclean spirits are everywhere. We know this from Enoch and Jubilees. We see Yeshua interacting with them everywhere he goes. We see the manifestations of them in different ways in modern society. And we know that there's an actual priesthood that's dedicated to that darker type of magic and that darker type of interaction with unclean spirits. But to take that theology and whitewash it for the masses and put it out here for us to try to catch on to, while simultaneously rejecting the Father, rejecting the creation and the Creator and his Son, that is inherently assumed in this different model that NASA pushes and propagates. So this is something that I'm just, unfortunately, I can't find the clip of a lot of people don't realize that the actual vector that you see going through the NASA logo is used not just with NASA, but it's used in a lot of their mission patches. It's used with a lot of TV and movies. It's also used with a ton of other symbolism and all the other agencies that are created from other governments having to do with space and space exploration. So NASA claims that they took that symbol, that vector symbol, in their logo, and they claim, actually I can show you right here. You can see the NASA logo on their VAB building. They claim they took that vector symbol from an actual airplane from the 1950s, and that was some sort of design related to that. But ultimately, why would Russia, Japan, Israel, all these other space agencies take that same vector symbol and put it in everything they do as well? It doesn't. Why would they take something that's supposedly our cultural history and put it in their symbol? It's not, because it's an actual ancient occultic symbol that has to do with Satan worship, with Ra. So that's unfortunately, I've lost the clip to go into greater detail on that. But as you're seeing on the front, as I talked about earlier, we do have this idea of similarities and outward symbolism. So we already talked about their theology. We talked about their origins. We talked about the propaganda being pushed by their priesthood. And this is what their whitewashed priesthood is today, is the propaganda arm that we see through NASA. We see these are not coincidences. The idea that they would fabricate this image on the left to look just like the famous image of Isis on the right. Like we already talked about, I'm skipping through some of this, guys, for the sake of time. Let's get to the actual Big Bang concept, because this little Big Bang image, like I talked about, it's actually you'll see this in all their other diagrams that depict the Big Bang. And we already talked about the Bell idea, which is an homage to the Vimanas, which is an homage, which directly correlates to Vishnu and the multidimensional theory and the cosmic order of destruction and rebirth. This little Big Bang image is always the same. The way they depict it, and it looks just like the Jesuit image of the sun worship that we see in Catholic churches. And this is who's that peeking through your window? Hey, it's the Pope looking for little children. Here's an angry one. This is the one that's on Neil deGrasse Tyson's vest that he wears in a lot of interviews. There's more, just in some of their statues around their churches, you'll see the same image of this sun. It's a specific sun. They see it in a lot of places. This is the actual logo of the Jesuit order. You see it again. Some of their artistic depictions on their doors and their walls actually goes back to ancient Greece. It used to be on the shields of Grecian warriors. It's Helios. It's the Greek sun god that the Egyptians did worship. A lot of people don't realize that Egypt was ruled by Greece for 1,000 years at one point. This is why you have a lot of intermarrying of Greek god worship in ancient Egypt. Here's another shield of Helios, which is, a lot of people may recognize some of the modern versions of this as we see it in the Long Island Harbor in New York, and big green statue. You guys recognize this? What we talked about from, I think it was episode 5. We talked about Olympus, home of the gods, and I went over Apollyon, which is more of a Latin Roman version of ancient Helios, and he's always riding on these horses, these 4 horsemen in the sky, and he rides on this chariot in the sky. Same gods that they worship, same sun image. It's also in Freemasonry, highly used. A little sun on the top left-hand corner. Got a face. And what's interesting, guys, is that this sun, this one's in the bottom right, is to be distinct in Freemasonry religion and artistry. Here it is in the square and compass. It's everywhere. It's in their master patches. But look here, guys. It's actually to be distinct from the actual eye above. We're going to talk about the eye above later as we review the eye of Ra and other things, eye of Horus, in later episodes as we get into Revelation, and we talk about the first and second beast. But this is something to consider, and it's everywhere in their symbology. So unfortunately, that's all I had for the presentation tonight, and I had to cut it a little bit short because I'm actually running out of time, and I wanted to give some time to talk with our brothers here who joined me tonight. And guys, I really appreciate y'all joining with me. This is an honor to have both of you on here, and specifically for this topic. So I present a lot of information, and I did it quickly. Unfortunately, that's the way a lot of these episodes go because I'm just trying to squeeze as much as I can in without the people losing interest. But what are your thoughts so far of everything reviewed?
I think it's a trip. I think that they're getting you subconsciously ready to accept their pagan ideology. And I was just at the Freemason building earlier today. I guess we're like the world's biggest temple or whatever. And that sun is on the front doors, bro. Like there's a sun symbol on both of the entrances. It's all over the place. And then of course they have the Egyptian like Sphinx that's half woman up there. So it's very interesting. And then when you talk about how you tie it in with Greek and Egyptian, right? That's why they're basically, you can't really tell the difference. And you go down Washington D.C., it's Roman stuff everywhere, Egyptian stuff everywhere. So I think that you hit it on the nail. It's actually very intriguing the way you laid it out. They set up this whole Big Bang and the universe and all these stories of string theory, interdimensional universes and all this stuff, right? Because it is actually tracking back to their own belief system that they had from back in the day that maybe they want to like bring back out. And so they've gotten everyone ready for it without even realizing it. And they had to kind of show you what they were doing. So I thought it was lots of gravy, bro. It was super cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this again. It's been real choppy on my end for some reason. Y'all say you can hear me clearly, but it's been so digitized and hard to keep up with listening. Oh. But I didn't have much time either. I just wanted to say before I go, I don't even really need to come on here in Babylon. I'm with Austin and Sean, and we're investigating Babylon. But for the gospel of the kingdom, he will hold it down. But come check us out on Wednesdays live on the Uncommon Ground. And I'm West Blaze. If you subscribe to West Blaze Music here on YouTube, you can find the new show Sean and I have been working on. And you will not be disappointed. We're pouring through the scriptures, showing experiments. We're looking at the historical record. We're digging into declassified documents, doing interviews. The vibe is exciting. The music is uplifting. And we glorify the Father through the truth of his creation. And we just invite you to join. Bless God and may he bless you guys. I got to get going. I love y'all.
Thanks, West Blaze. Appreciate you, Brandon.
No worries, brother. Much love.
I'll see you soon.
Cool.
Guys, if you haven't already subscribed to West Blaze Music, go over there and do that. Open a new browser so you don't miss what we're saying here, and go subscribe to West Blaze. But ultimately, this is a unique concept here where I'm going to share just a couple images, Austin, of some stuff I touched on in the past, of just some of the. This is, I think, from episode 4, and we talked about the ancient flying machine, or part 4. We talked about the flying machines, both Vimanas. We have the Egyptian concepts of the boat of Ra. We also have the Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian concept of this thing right here. He's got the Dagon hat, you got the star, the sun up there, and you got these dudes up above chilling in this little vessel, chilling. This is everywhere. This was supposedly, I read off, I don't know if you saw that episode or not, but I even read off some Roman literature where they talked about how it was a great honor to be able to, and a responsibility to navigate these flying machines. And this is what the U.S. Air Force in the 1950s started replicating in some experimentation. They claim that this was a failed experiment. I don't believe that at all. So this is exactly like some of the designs we see from the ancient depictions of what's described in the Bhagavad Gita from ancient India. That's up on the top left as the Vimanas and the different types of Vimanas. One of them's circular, one of them's a blimp, one of them looks like a NASA capsule. So all three, we see the US doing the same designs, all of them relating to flight. The actual circular object, as you see on the top right, that the Sumerians and Babylonians literally chiseled into stone, that's what we see in the experimentation, literally with the dude's feet hanging out the bottom, like you see in some of the depictions. And it's all based on the same concept of something that has a circular shape that isn't flying on Bernoulli's principle with drag and lift under the wingtips, but instead has this left to right axis dimensional capability where it can just move back and forth. And of course, this is the actual photo release, supposedly released by the US government from the Navy about UFOs, about what they're about to disclose in this month, the month of June.
Yeah, that's a trip, bro. That's a trip. So I haven't seen I have to go back and watch all your episodes that I haven't seen in the series. This is because you're ladling gravy, bro. You gotta chill out. I don't bring my biscuits, but I'm trying to figure out. So basically, they actually had these devices. Yeah, like they had these physical flying devices, and I'm trying to figure out, do some type of metaphysical entities move similar to this? This is some type of imitation, or maybe that's just what they came and showed us, or I don't know. I still haven't been able to figure out exactly what it is. Do you think it's nothing like that? Do you think that it's just an ancient technology that used to exist and that we're practically just imitating it? And it's kind of nothing deeper than that, or I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out. It's like a rabbit hole for me. I really want to know.
I think it has a lot to do with the same experiments they're doing today with where they're basically doing seances with high levels of drugs and getting messages, just like Jack Parsons and Anton LaVey and all those guys would talk about how they would get messages from these spiritual guides, except that they're not just getting theology, they're getting actual information for advancing these types of machines. And I think that started a long time ago, back in the 50s, as far as the interaction in the United States and when they started to experiment with these kinds of concepts. Just like you would have in the ancient days, Sumerians, Babylonians, Egyptians, Greeks, Indians, that they were literally interacting with Nephilim demigods. I shouldn't say it like that. People that call themselves demigods, but they were Nephilim. I do believe that there were Nephilim as far as their post-flood Nephilim, post-flood giants, but they're not the same Nephilim as before the flood, because their fathers weren't literally the descendants, or their fathers weren't literally watchers. And I actually go over that in that episode as I explain the difference between a post-flood Nephilim as someone that learned genetic manipulation. So therefore you can affect through gestation the actual growth of a child through different growth hormones. There's 5 different growth hormones that go in the roots of trees and plants. That's why that verse I read from 1 Enoch chapter 8, where it talked about one of the guys taught enchantments and root cuttings. And so it's also talked about Enoch chapter 7, 1 Enoch chapter 7. And that's a situation where they can take, there's 5, there's auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, ethyl alcohol, and there's one more I can't think of right now, but they affect how the roots of trees and plants grow, the elongation of their stems and their roots, and then in their actual limbs, and how long the stem grows before it becomes a root, how long the actual trunk grows before it stems out, how long the stems grow before it starts flowering leaves, everything to do with the height, the 3-dimensional growth of a plant. You can take those and you can literally put them into a pregnant woman during gestation, and supposedly back in the day they had a way to affect the outcome where the babies then would become giants as they grew up. So this is how you have them creating giants after the flood in a biological way, and ascribing their lineage and descendancy to the quote-unquote gods, the watchers from before the flood. Because remember, there's one watcher left according to First Enoch and Jubilees after the flood, and that's Azazel, or this Satan character.
Mm-hmm.
So according to those books, the rest of the watchers, they got punished. Because they all took wives. But apparently this Azazel cat didn't take a wife, and he's still left over, as Jubilees chapter 10 talks about. He then gets control over 1/10 of all these unclean spirits that are still around. They then go out to deceive mankind, as we read from Jubilees chapter 8, 1-4. Mankind finds the teachings of the watchers and starts practicing them again. Suddenly the Nephilim reappear. So I think those Nephilim doing occult practices are getting an influence from the unclean spirits and from literally this angel who wasn't punished, who's still around, this Azazel angel, whom I think is the Satan character that literally talked to Jesus and literally tempted him, and literally would be bound with the chain in Revelation 20 by Michael, and taken away from deceiving mankind. So there's a lot of backstory to this. I'm trying to give you a super short depiction, or a super short summary, to get to the point of saying that interaction, most of the Nephilim of the biblical days were rulers of the nations. Like I read the quote from Josephus, because of their own strength, they defied God, and they took over the resources of men and acquired all the acquisitions and assumed places of authority and power over the kingdoms. This is why you would see in the Exodus of the Israelites come out of Egypt and they go into the land of Canaan, they're fighting giants everywhere they go, and they're fighting who rule over these little city-states inside the land of Canaan, because they're the ones who put themselves in power as a lineage, claiming they were associated with the gods. But they were just men that genetically manipulated themselves, which is a part of the agenda that I think is going on today. But a part of their ruling and their power was having these actual machines to fly like they were gods.
Right. Okay.
So,
yeah. That's kind of what that's kind of where I'm leaning towards too, is like that, it's like an imitation of the flight of what they would call gods.
Yeah.
So then you agree that, so you think that they get out of bondage, right? That there was a timeline given to them, 70 generations, if I'm not mistaken. I think Enoch says that. I'm not sure.
That's going to be the actual rebellious angels that are named in Enoch that took wives, and they actually got a specific punishment for that. But their offspring, the Nephilim, they're according to Enoch and Jubilees, that offspring either killed themselves off or were all killed in the flood, and then now they're disembodied spirits, which are now what we refer to as unclean spirits or demonic spirits, were still out and about after the flood. And this is what Noah's trying to adjust in Jubilees 10, where he's like, hey, he's praying to God. He's like, hey, Father, look, these spirits are still here. They're leading my sons into lawlessness and wickedness and destruction. Help. And so then the Father through his angels binds 9/10 of those unclean spirits, those disembodied Nephilim. The other 10th are given under control of Satan. Satan is called Mastema in the book of Jubilees. And he actually goes on in verse 12 of Jubilees 10:12 to call him directly Satan, but earlier it references as Mastema. There's a lot of people with multiple names in the scriptures. You just have to look at the context.
Yeah, sure.
So this Mastema character, who also is referenced as Satan, he gets control over these things. They then go out and continue to tempt mankind into lawlessness. So ultimately, there is the angels that were locked up, from what I can understand. I'm actually currently debating this with a brother of mine, Ken Heiderbrecht, because I used to think that they weren't getting out until the Yeshua returned they would only get out to stand judgment before the Father through Yeshua. But there's some things in Enoch 65 and some other places, First Enoch 65, that makes me think they might actually get out right before he returns and are a part of the end time deception. So right. I haven't really talked about that on my channel in great detail yet, because I want to do an actual separate video on that. But that is definitely something that all I know is that there is one angel that's been out this whole time, one rebellious angel, and that's the one that's referred to generically as the dragon, the serpent, right. Satan, Mastema, Azazel. He's the dude running around in authority over the unclean spirits, who then go out and deceive the nations. And that's why I think that he has literal interaction in the end time events, which finally gets him locked away during the millennial reign. And then later he comes out to be destroyed and done like a fire. So there's a lot of details that I've gone over in previous shows, and even on my Kime Context channel. I'm just trying to make it as quick as possible for you. So I do believe that the majority of those rebellious watchers are locked away until the very end. But there's been one that's not been locked away this whole time, which has all the information those other guys had. You know what I mean? So like he can deceive them just as handily as all the other ones did.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. That's pretty much where I've been for a while. I think Enoch's legit, right? A lot of people don't. I've been working through it, working through the Satan thing. I think that it's not always a personification, and we assume it to always be. But I think that there is a centralized, adversary. So I've been looking into a lot of that. I think it's a little bit deeper than people sometimes give it credit for. But yeah, I do. I think that looking at Enoch, they were put into 7 generations of bondage, and one would think, well, if that's a certain amount of time, then that time runs out. That's just kind of how I always looked at it, right? Just like that, simple. I haven't really gone further than that. Just if you're locked up for a certain amount of time, that time runs out. And say that they get out and basically they follow the guide of this guy. He utilizes them, or maybe not. Like you said, it could be without them. He doesn't need them. But I think, there's like 10% that didn't get put up, disembodied spirits. He utilizes them. And then some of the rest of them maybe come back into this final great deception. And that's why I really lean towards absorbing the true cosmology, because it makes it a lot simpler to deceive everyone, So, I don't know. I think we're in store for some crazy things personally. I happen to think that we're in that season. And it was cool. We need to have more conversations. I've watched a bunch of your videos just here and there. I'm like pretty busy, so I haven't been able to watch them in a sequential order or anything. But I think you're awesome, bro. I like that. I like your take on it too, man. So,
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
appreciate it, man. There's man. I'm just looking at some of the rest of my slides. I had to cut short for tonight, but maybe I'll have to maybe include them in a part 2, because there's so much more to this topic, and I'm just trying to be strategic with what I talk about when I don't, because I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to like confuse people, but at the same time, there's so much to explain, because this is why the occult is full of, like in Freemasonry, right? You learn by degrees, because there is so much to learn about even the occult. I'm not glorifying them in any way. I'm just saying that's just the truth of the matter. That's the matter. It's a matter of fact. Like, they just have a lot of deception, and their story is so convoluted and so all encompassing through different generations. Like, I can understand why they would initiate people into their ilk and their cult, and then say, well, we're going to teach you in steps, because you got to prove you understand certain knowledge before you get to the next step. Because there's just a lot to the story. Oh, yeah. And so, when we go in from a biblical perspective, we try to deconstruct the story. There's a lot to go over. So, man, it's a challenge. But yeah, brother, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. Tell us how people can find you, because I want people to be able to follow your work. I want to be able to support you on right now, guys. If you're not aware, Austin is actually traveling across the country, going to different cities, telling people about the truth of the biblical creation, as well as the truth of how to behave, right? Literally the behavior of the Creator, the Torah. He's going around and he's expressing in people's face, in real interactions, doing it with love, doing it with wisdom. And I think that this is something that actually needs to be, more people need to find out about, so they can help you stay at it. So tell them where they can find you, brother.
Well, as of now, Witsit Gets It on YouTube, which is WITSIT Gets It. Witsit Gets It on YouTube. I have the same thing on Instagram. I don't really use it, just as if a backup if I wasn't able to get the word out. And then I'm also on Facebook, Austin Witsit. And then we have masqueradetour.com, which is MASKERAID, like mask, a raid, like if you raided something, masqueradetour.com. And we kind of keep that updated as much as I can, contact and donate information and stuff. So as of now, we're rocking with Witsit Gets It on YouTube. And then I have Globebusters Activism as the backup for now. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, Witsit Gets It. I think I've done pretty good, so, kind of circumventing this, the censorship with my terminology. So hopefully we stick it out.
Yeah. I just want to show everyone watching. If you put in Witsit Gets It in the search bar on YouTube, it won't pull up his channel, guys. He's being heavily censored. So what you got to do is you got to go to filters and choose channel, and then it pulls up. His is the top one that pulls up. Witsit Gets It. Okay, guys. Otherwise, because this is how YouTube censors people. This is why Lighthouse is coming out, because this is the Masquerade Tour he's talking about. So go subscribe to his channel. Go check out his podcast. He does live broadcasts almost daily, which I think is a feat in itself. Because as someone that does live broadcasts, guys, it's not easy. Being able to talk the whole time, to be on point, answer questions, interact with the live chat, try to remain focused to what you're doing. So go show him some love and support him. And yeah, man, we appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, no doubt. And you keep doing it too, man. You're crushing, bro. And as long as we all just keep, trying to get the truth out there and doing the Father's work, bro, they can't stop us,
if we come together and we're unified, this is what I'm always telling people since we started our channel. We got to stop the in-house squabbling, right? That's how the enemy divides us up and waters down our message. But I think what we try to share with people, and what you probably saw with Uncommon Ground episodes, is obviously we have the history, the resource, and the capability to explain to them just the basic premise of what it means to be a disciple of Yeshua, right? You're practicing the behavior of Yeshua, which is the covenant behavior of the Creator with mankind, which, he promises you if you practice this, that his Son will judge you favorably, give you eternal life. This is the overall encapsulation of the John 3:16 promise, okay?
Right.
So we go through that basic with people, but so many people struggle to connect those basic ideas from one to another because they're trying to fill that stuff into a heliocentric cosmology. So therefore, we've had to express to people, look, the gospel, the good news that Jesus preached everywhere he went, and all the prophets before him, which is him bringing you to the New Jerusalem, him bringing you to the land of promise in your resurrected body, you to live forever in a place of peace. That kingdom comes down to the ground and creates peace across the entire earth. That whole storyline assumes a biblical Genesis 1, Jubilees 2, 2 Ezra 6 cosmology. None of that stuff can fit inside of a ball in space. So once we get you the right opening, the right setting to the story, the right description of the room that the story takes place in, then you'll easier understand all these little pieces that connect, that leads to your salvation and resurrection. Absolutely. So this has kind of been our push at Kingdom Context, is we're like, all right, let's try to get back to the definitions of these words. And these words do not define a ball spinning wildly and aimlessly in space according to occult math. So it actually just defines a very well-organized, enclosed house. And you just live at one of the bottom layers. And the Father with his angels, they live in the top layers, and they want to interact with you. They do on a regular basis. And in the future, they're actually going to bring their house, or a version of their house, down to the ground and create peace on the earth and get rid of all these dudes that are destroying the earth and trying to do false things that destroy yourself, and that are trying to genetically modify you, and all this occult practices that we're seeing as we investigate the practices of Babylon. All that is antithetical to the gospel of the kingdom of God. The description, the setting that it takes place in, the behavior that you do inside that setting, all of the things that the world teaches you, which is Babylonian theology, is the opposite of what the gospel of the kingdom teaches you, that the Messiah taught. So that's kind of our push. And, it's we try to get better at describing it as simplistically as possible so that it doesn't go over people's head, and I can quickly reference scriptures that make an impact with them. And it's just, it's been a work in progress, been refining that idea for like 3 years now. So it's good to see brothers like you that are out there in your own vein, in your own lane, doing the same thing essentially, but hitting it from a little bit more technical angle, because there's a ton of people out there that need that technical information. Like they're left brain people. Like they're engineers. They're people that do math. They're people that need that information. So I think, I've learned a lot from you, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And so I think that it's well needed that we all have different gifts and talents. We work together. We can take out deception. So I'm excited about it. Yeah.
I agree, bro.